Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to use a workflow to revalidate your contact's email address every 30 days. So here we are in the workflow creation screen. It's going to be a contact-based workflow. We're going to start with a blank workflow. I'm going to click next. So the first thing we'll do is give the workflow a name. So the trigger we're going to use, set up the trigger, is when filter criteria is met. And we're going to find the validate status and the validate date fields. So if we look in contact properties, validate once the app's installed will create two properties, validate date and validate status. So we're going to choose validate date, and we're going to say is more than 30 days ago. That will be our trigger. So there we have the enrollment trigger set up. The next thing we're going to do is drop validate in as a check. So we're going to click on the plus button, and over here on the left on our connected apps we're going to choose validate. I'm going to choose email validation. If we were to now run this workflow, for every contact who hasn't been validated in the last 30 days, it would run a new validation. But we may want to do some more than that. So what if somebody comes back as an invalid email address, or unknown, or a catch-all? There's lots of rules that we can then put onto the workflow to make it a little bit smarter and add people to lists based on their validation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put a branch in. We're going to base on a single property value, and the property we're going to use is the validate status. So if we look for validate, and we've got validate status. Now the validate status can be 4 different states. So when validate runs an email validation, it will return one of 4 different things. So one response is that it's a valid email address. Number 2 is that it's an invalid email address. Number 3 is that it's unknown, because the mail server at that time cannot tell us whether it's valid or invalid. And finally, it's been identified as a catch-all address. So that's our 4 branches. Set those up. That will now put us into the 4 branches into the workflow, as you can see here. And then you can decide what you want to do with these statuses. So typically what we would do, if the email comes back as valid, is we would set as a marketing contact. Set marketing contact status, which is set as marketing contact, because we know that they're valid. Similarly, if they're invalid, we'd probably do a similar thing, say set marketing contact status as a non-marketing contact, because we know that there's an invalid email address. It's been identified as an invalid email address. Now you may want to do that straight away, or you may just want to put them on a quarantine list to check and then manually set as a marketing contact. So the other thing we could do here for invalid contacts is to add them to a list. Add to a static list, and we're going to choose a quarantine list that we've set up, and we're going to add them into that. And that's it. That's how you set up a workflow using Valid8.